Canada. Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.
Hey, back in 2001, Arvydas Sabonis tried to draw a foul on Shaq, flopped, slapped his hand into Rasheed Wallace's face, chipped Rasheed Wallace's tooth. Rasheed Wallace got pissed off, threw a towel in his face, said, "I'll fuck you up." They asked Arvydas about it afterwards, and they said, "What'd you think about that?" Arvydas said, "I'll kill him."
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe is how you get outline.
Now, the reason why that's funny, just for those that don't know, here's Arvydas Sabonis.
Golpea Sabonis y se pita falta. 2. Sabonis cabecea a Bryson y es descalificado. 3. Thompson golpea a Sabas y sigue jugando. 4. Santos golpea a Thompson y sigue jugando. 5. Thompson huye y Armstrong golpea a Santos y también sigue jugando.
Now, anybody that can drop a man with a headbutt and then get sucker punched in the back of the head, and then the other guy runs away after doing it, and he didn't mean to hit you, slapped you, and chipped your tooth, you probably shouldn't fuck with that guy. That's just my opinion. Not to mention when you're 7'3" and over 300 pounds as well. But anyways, what's up, y'all? It's the Hoopstorians. We're back and worse than ever. We got a special guest with us today, Dr. Peter Rumm. Before we get into that, let's get into this day in NBA history. This day in NBA history, August 5th, 1962. Patrick Ewing was born in Kingston, Jamaica. One, a lot of people don't realize he's Jamaican. 2, where do you guys have Ewing all time? All time. And also, if he would have won one of those rings that he could have possibly got, maybe he doesn't get injured in 99. Maybe he wins one. Maybe Starks doesn't go 2 for 18 in Game 7. Maybe he wins one. And maybe P.J. Brown doesn't flip Charlie Ward into the stands in 97 and suspensions derail him there. Where would you guys have Ewing? Where would you have him now? And then where would you have him if he had one of those rings? We'll go with you first, Jules, and then work our way around to Hoops and then up to the Doc.
So to me, where I rank him right now, out of the all-time centers, I have him 9th, and I believe he's between 30 and 35 on my list. Where I find the biggest difficulty is because when we talk about other players who have won rings, a lot of them you can bring up like bad moments, and he just brought up a really good bad moment for him, and we don't necessarily tax them for it. But there's definitely some times where, he's missing the layup at the last shot and he's looking in the 95. Camera with his, and definitively in 94, I'm pretty sure he's favored in that series against Hakeem. So to me, it's difficult for Ewing. I think he's definitely one of to me, I still have him as a top 5 guys that hasn't won a ring. But if he has at least one, I don't know how much far up that he would necessarily be. Because I think for the centers rankings list and for the totality of centers, I think it's really deep. So I don't know even if he had one ring, for me personally, if he would be that much more, if he would be higher. It's between him and David Robinson for me.
Yeah, I have him 10th, I believe, all-time centers. I have like he's just behind Robinson and Mikan, but all time, like everybody, I believe I have him in the late 30s, like 38-ish. If he wins a ring, he's definitely moving up in that upper pantheon. I think it becomes kind of like a Dirk Nowitzki situation where you kind of forgive the very obvious playoff drops and you say, well, he did get it done one year. He can lead you to a title. And so he's in like the top 20. Certainly the numbers support that. Certainly the accolades support that. He doesn't have an MVP, but he's still, I think, one of the best players in the league in the late 80s, top 5. He's all NBA first team all defense, one of the best offensive and defensive centers combined that we've ever seen. But the playoff drops, we can't ignore them because he never led his team to a title. And he played horrendously bad against Hakeem Olajuwon. I get Hakeem Olajuwon's a great center. He's one of the greatest defensive players of all time. But we saw Shaq do okay against Hakeem. We've seen. I don't think David Robinson performed as poorly as Ewing did against Hakeem. So I think right now he's there. I mean, obviously he's going to be there forever. He doesn't play anymore, but he's there. If I would probably put him up in the mid 20s to maybe 20.
Doc?
Well, first off, I kind of agree with the things you just said. I have Ewing about 8. I think Robinson is peak with things like the scoring title, quad, quadruple double, MVP, things like that. Puts it over the bar. I was at a game where one time where Hakeem scored 50 and Robinson scored 47. I mean, I saw some real battles. This was a regular season game. And they incredible, talent. Now Ewing, I think if you gave him a title, I still don't think I would leapfrog him over Robinson. I have to think about Mike, and it's tough to rate because I never saw him play, but he revolutionized the game, did so many things. So I think I'd probably still keep him below Mike, and probably would be right around 30 all time. And I'll just say we're going to talk about analytics tonight.
Yeah,
Robinson's on the list for analytics. Ewing is not, and Dream is on there. So that's kind of, we'll talk more about that.
Well, that was this day in NBA history. All right, let's get into it. Doc, you hit me up. You said you wanted to talk about analytics, so I'm going to let you take the floor. That way you can tell us where you want us to go with this discussion.
Well, this is a tough subject because analytics, first off, what's an analytic? It's defined by Oxford Dictionary as a systematic computational analysis of data and statistics. That's a mouthful. I'm a physician, but also an epidemiologist. I know some statistics. I don't like statistics. I hated statistics courses. But in basketball, I do see the value of having some kind of advanced stats and or computational methods to try and get that. There's really 2 people that I owe my talk to. The first is John Hollinger. He was a Memphis Grizzly vice president. He had been to ESPN before, and he left, came back to ESPN. And he does most of the statistics, which are found on basketballreference.com or either ESPN sites that I'll talk about. In addition, there's a guy named Dean Glover. He wrote a book called Basketball on Paper. He's really the founder of basketball wind shares and defensive wind shares and writing on that. So they're really there. And there's a saying, at least when I was writing I wrote for the NBA for what was called Hoops. It's now called Hoopside, called Hoops World, a little bit for SpursTalk.com. A little about my background. I'm a sports physician. I was a doctor on Shaquille O'Neal's high school team. And I was also a basketball official. I did many high-level games some with Adrian Dantley, who's a referee, and 3 NBA referees in the D.C. area. So a lot of my passion for the game comes from officiating as well as watching the game. And in officiating, we actually went back and kind of studied the players and the teams we were going to do. And we wouldn't turn to analytics where we look at other things to figure out. We would look at basic stats. And there's a joke that basic stats are for casuals. That's really not true. They do provide something, particularly with the per game average or seasonal average, rather than just a raw total. A lot of debates about the value of them, but certainly with James leading in points, Stockton assists and steals and things like that, how valuable are they just because they have those cumulative totals? They played a long time. But there is this field called analytics, and we'll talk about them a little bit tonight. I won't go into some of the deep into the statistics stuff. I thought about that, what to go into, what not. I'll highlight a few things I think need to be brought up as we go along. There's about 8 or so common statistics. I'll just name some of them right now. One is per. We'll talk about that one. We'll talk about win shares. We'll talk about defensive win shares and offensive win shares. We'll talk a little about value over replacement, which is also called sometimes wins over replacement. We'll talk about defensive rating, defensive win shares, and a couple more that'll come up. The efficiency of shooting. There's really two ways to do that. One is called effective field goal percentage. There's another one called true shooting percentage. And they both have that in particular has its fans. Some like one, some like the other. And I personally am think they both have some value, and we'll talk about what they mean. When we talk about analytics, really 5 players through the different analytics kind of really show up. Actually, I'm going to bring up 6. Today, it's Jokic, and also Shea, the MVP of this year, did really, Gilgeous-Alexander did both have some really strong analytics, particularly over the last few years. And in fact, as we'll talk about, Jokic is actually the number 1 all time right now in per. Not on an adjusted 48 minutes, which is actually Michael Jordan still, but it depends on how you look at that. But Michael Jordan shows up high in a lot of these analytics, which is expected. He's one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest. James shows up in many. Some of these things, particularly win shares, we'll talk about. There's value of playing extra seasons, and you build up some kind of reservoir of statistics that go into the formulas. And kind of help. And then besides that, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is up there, particularly on the, we'll talk about, he's the all-time leader in win shares, on basic win shares. He also is very high in some defense statistics, but by far the player just shows up in almost every statistic somewhere, at least in the top 15, many times the top 10, and many times the top 5 or 3 is Tim Duncan. Just shows he was kind of a complete basketball player. No matter how you do statistics or rate things, he brought a lot of value to the team.
So wait, let's go with that. Let's just go with that. So I'm gonna ask Hoops and Jules, how much should we value then? Because like the raw numbers of Tim Duncan, it's 19 points a game. People talk shit about that. Field goal percentage in particular high for a center. We'll start with you, Hoops. Where would you value the analytics of Duncan being everywhere, but the raw stats not necessarily backing that up?
Well, I would value it a lot higher because everybody he mentioned, Jokic, LeBron, Tim Duncan, right? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, what do they have in common? They're all winners. They're all winners at the highest level, and they're all winners multiple times over. Jokic, not yet, but I think he will be eventually. And Tim Duncan, while his box score isn't as flashy as some other players, like Kevin Garnett arguably has a better box score stats in 2004 than Duncan ever had in his career, but Duncan just leads to winning more, and it's because he does things that don't necessarily show up on the box score. I think you look at the 2007 finals, right, where Tony Parker wins finals MVP, probably shouldn't have, because Duncan's doing everything else. And so you see him anchoring a defense, and for 10 years he never had below a top 3 defense, 5 number 1 defenses. He doesn't record a lot of blocks, and I've seen that argued before. Well, he's not like he's Hakeem. He gets however many blocks a game, but that doesn't tell the full story. Tim Duncan was great at protecting the rim with his length and his IQ, and so
he was never out of position.
Yeah, he was never out of position, and people didn't go near the rim when Tim Duncan was there, right? And so I think I'd value it very highly because, like, again, everybody he's talked about is a winner.
Well, I'll just jump real quick in on this, on defense in particular, and winning. I think defense does help drive winning more than people realize. You look at defensive win shares, Bill Russell's number 1, and he leads that by really a large margin. But number two is Duncan. And I have to look at the list to see who's number 3, but number 4 is Dream. So I think it's Kareem is third. But if not, Kareem is up there close. So again, winners doing things. And then Duncan also shows up in defensive rating at 3rd. And then I have 2 different lists, and I wrote Mr. Hollinger. He hasn't responded yet. One list on Basketball Reference has Duncan 12 on defensive plus minus. Another list on a pretty credible site called StatViews has him number 1. So that's a little variation, maybe a way they're calculating statistics. But the bottom line is, we talked about that on my last talk on rating players. I really believe defense is underrated, and what makes winning. And it may not be exactly half the game, but it's pretty close if it's not.
Jules, what do you think? What about on the box score versus the analytics with Duncan?
So as a Spurs fan, I push Tim Duncan all the time. Not for my bias, but because of what was being brought up, the stuff that you really have to look into with the advanced metrics. He's basically the advanced metric king in my eyes. Now Jokic is slowly, I think, take over as time goes on. But for me, that's where I've gotten into arguments with people that only value box score and only value what is being put onto the stat sheet. And it's where I get so frustrated because I've had people tell me before, well, if it's not in the stat sheet, then it shouldn't count. Well, that doesn't entail the valuability of some of these players like a Tim Duncan, like a Bill Russell, like these guys who aren't, or even like Draymond Green, for example, that you physically have to watch what they're doing to understand the impact of how they impact winning defensively, offensively, all this kind of different aspects of the game. And I think Tim Duncan is unfortunately one of these guys because, like you mentioned, he's averaging 19 points a game. How is somebody who's averaging 19 points a game and basically 10, 11 rebounds a top 5 player all time? Well, the advanced metrics will back up everything that Tim Duncan is doing for the Spurs for an extended period of time to bring that valuability, to bring that impact in and shed it in light.
So
there's an excellent question here. I don't know who's supposed to answer it, but it's how come?
No. I'm going to address it right now.
Good.
So as far as defensive statistics, the number one defensive stat that's going to have the most accumulation totality is defensive rebounds, right? Or is the block leader going to have as many blocks as the leader in defensive rebounds? Yes or no, real quick?
I think the rebounds has a higher weighting, I believe.
Right. People can average 10 defensive rebounds. Nobody can average 10 blocks, right? Right. So anyways, so as far as the defensive stats, people don't factor in the rebounding. What made Rodman such a good defender? Oh, his rebounding. That was the stats that brought him up, that did it. Bruce Bowen, for example, is a really good defender. Now, I agree that really good, and what separates is stats on it. That's why I think Duncan never got the Defensive Player of the Year, because Olajuwon's good, and he's got good defensive stats to back it up. But if you stay in front of your man, such as a Bruce Bowen would do, and not out of defensive position, that's the very first rule of defense, is you stay in front of your man, between your man and the basket. So that's where that comes in. I want to go into win shares now, because you said that. How much do you guys value win shares? Because I'm just going to tell you how I've done this, and I'm currently doing a list on this as well. So Bill Russell, you said defensive win share. Bill Russell has the top 6 seasons all time of defensive win shares and 10 out of the top 19. Now, when looking at analytics, like I'm trying to show, and I'm going through all the list of everybody, I'm down to like 1985. Bill Russell, on 7 of his titles, led the team in win shares in the regular season and in the playoffs. 9 of his titles, he either led them in win shares in the regular season or the playoffs, at 9 of them. And then of the last 2, nobody led in Havlicek and Bailey Howell. They all led in the regular season. Havlicek led in the playoffs in win shares. So there's to me, would you guys agree with this? If you lead your team in win shares in the regular season and in the playoffs, generally speaking, there's really no argument that you're not the best player on the team, right? Especially if you're playing the most minutes, getting the most money, winning the most MVPs. So that's what I'm saying. Where would we factor in? And we're going to go back around the opposite. We'll start with Jules, then go to Hoops, then go to Doc. Jules, where would you value win shares, especially somebody that's winning titles and they're leading their team in the regular season, in win shares, and in the playoffs?
Well, I rank them like I think they're important, but to me it's more of the middle of the pack because it definitely shows how you contribute and your actual valuability to actually winning a game. But sometimes to me, I think the win shares definitely are. Sometimes I think they're skewed. I think they're pretty consistent in overall, but it definitely will show for a finite amount of time, specifically in the playoffs, like you mentioned with Havlicek and Howell, that how you can contribute to a playoff team. And I think that sometimes gets skewed because of how people can kind of turn that into a narrative of somebody who's not leading in their win shares or defensive win shares, and it's somebody else like a role player. There's definitely some times in which that can happen that I've seen people will push like, well, if you're the best player, how are you not leading win shares? So I think it's fine. I think it's just some random inconsistencies here and there throughout NBA history.
Hoops.
Just to piggyback on what Joel said, I think typically it is indicative of, your role in the team and your impact on winning. There are some anomalies. I think one of them is 2020. I think in the regular season, Anthony Davis is leading the team in win shares, but we know
in the playoffs.
But we know LeBron's the best player on the team. He's the offensive end.
piggyback on that real quick. 2010, same thing. Gasol leads the team in win shares in both, but
Yep.
we think go. So I think there's some exceptions to the rule, but generally.
Yes,
But generally,
yeah.
it is indicative. Yeah.
Anything else, Hoops? That's all I got. Nope.
I want to add two things to that. One is an adjustment to 48 minutes. Michael Jordan leapfrogs a number of players to become the number one all time. And Jokic in the last year had a record year for a year, looking at an adjusted 48 per minute. So I think that's one thing that can be done to make a better statistic. In the playoffs, James is number one. I'm sorry, James number one, and Duncan's up there high. I would argue that it'd be nice to have a statistic that'd be a finals only win shares to see what that would be, what the win shares were exactly in the finals, because James kind of ripped through the Eastern Conference for many years on pretty weak competition, got to the finals, and then in the finals may not have done quite so well, whether or not it was his fault or the team's, whatever. But I would love to see. In fact, I wrote an email to this John Hollinger. I haven't heard back yet, saying I suggested having a finals win shares and per. I think it'd be very interesting to see those in tables.
Well, I definitely think so too, because we care so much about the finals, and not only that, the finals MVP can skew people so much. Like I hear people arguing 2007, Tony Parker's better than Duncan. I think Duncan's really the best on all 5 of those title teams if you count the totality of the season, playoffs. Obviously there's some games where some series Kawhi's better, but then people think Kawhi just because he won the finals MVP is the best player on that team. For the totality of the season, I don't think that is at all. So since we don't have a playoff MVP, which I think overall we need a playoff MVP. Like 2 years ago, Jalen Brunson was the playoff MVP. I don't think anybody was better for their team in the playoffs than Brunson. And obviously he got bounced in the second round. With that being said, let's go back to this. Where is it that I think nowadays too, people try to convolute. See, I simplify basketball, and then I can go into a bunch of different branches, but it's all off these simple, these 3-pillar simple structure. Or maybe 4, if you want to factor in eye test and actually how to play and all that. Why do people value these raw stats over shit like this? And we're going to swing it back, go back around the same thing. Doc, you first, and Hoops and Jules. People are obsessed. We'll just use Bill Russell, for example. People are obsessed with Bill Russell averaged 15 points on 44%. So there's no way he was the best player on the team. He was the bus rider on the team. You know what I mean? He wasn't the one leading or anything like that. So where is it but these analytics with the defensive win shares, the offensive ratings of the team, defense clearly shows guys like that, the raw numbers of 15 points, but then you completely negate the fact that there's 23 rebounds and 8 blocks. 15, 23, and 8 is an amazing statistical game. Why do people hyper-focus on scoring so much, do you think it is, when every other thing points to it doesn't matter, these dudes are still winning? Doc.
Great question. And I think I want to capture the fact that I also put win shares a little below, even though the name is on winning, because I think the value of the other players on the team can kind of skew it, particularly on the defensive side. I think we should just quickly, I want to introduce it for the people we talk about these statistics. It's probably the most important one of these to look at first. I think it's called Performance Efficiency Rating, which is called PER by John Hollinger. And the average player in the NBA,
player efficiency rating.
Player efficiency rating, correct. Player efficiency rating. The average score, the formula of work. It's a very complex formula. It's got blocks. It's got steals. It's got turnovers. It's got all kinds of things, good and bad, in there. It's made to, and it adjusts to a factor where the average player in the league is set at 15. And kind of works around that. In fact, Jokic had one of the highest years again in per ever. And he is the all-time leader, which, again, is a little bit questionable because it does seem to value offense over defense. Although, again, some of his defensive things like plus minus and rating are a little bit stand out that he's not so far down the list. And there was an article in the Denver Post about a year and a half ago saying he was really dramatically working on his defense almost over anything else. He's really working hard on defense. So he is trying to get better. I think if he spent a couple weeks with Olajuwon, it would probably do the best thing for his game he ever could do. But the bottom line is, I think, so the all-time leaders, I think I like Per a lot, but it has a couple outliers. I just want to explain it. It's got up top is Jokic. It's got Michael Jordan and James right there. They're top three. That really great basketball players. Hard to justify that. But then you have to fall. This is one thing you have to fall all the way down and get Duncan at 15. You get Kobe Bryant way down at 29. And Kobe Bryant fans hate this statistic. I think the reason is it does measure somewhat shooting efficiency, where I don't know we're going to get time to talk to them, but an effective field goal percentage, Kobe Bryant is not even in the top 50 of all 250 of all time. He's at 47% in a measure that brings in 3 points into the equation. And in true shooting, true shooting percentage, he's also not that high up there. So the bottom line is, I really believe that a real fan of the sport should take at least two things. One is and see where the player stands out every year on that.
Just real quick on offensive rating all time, Kobe Bryant's 217th, and he's not even in the top 250 in defensive rating either.
Yeah, and he's not up there. That explains why he's not up there in win shares as well either. But the bottom line is, I would probably look at the I'd look at overall win shares. I'd look at defensive win shares just to get an overall value where my player. Now, defensive win shares is skewed somewhat toward the bigger, taller players, so it's a little bit artificial. But look where. I was looking down the list today. Manu Ginobili is about 40, and he was a good defender, so it kind of fits. And that other guards start showing up around that, 40 to 60 range. LeBron James, actually, surprisingly, people don't realize he did make 6 times all defensive NBA. He's a pretty good defender. He is 9th all time on defensive win shares. You can look at your players and get a really good, idea. I'm just gonna say when I look at players, I like to look at their base statistics per win shares, defensive win shares, and all NBA team selections, particularly first team and all defensive.
Well, I just want to say this though. Here's the problem with PER though, because there's seasons where like JaVale McGee's averaging over a 25 PER. It's on pace with like 94 Hakeem, 98 Jordan. Oh. So the thing is this, I like PER, but you have to add 2 things into it. You have to look at usage rate and you have to look at their minutes per game. They're averaging a lot of minutes and their usage rate is high, then PER works. But like someone like JaVale McGee, he's not on the same level as 94 Hakeem or 98 Jordan, but his PER says he is.
That's good. There are some outliers like that on the list that don't seem to really fit there. I did find a voice of the past on one of the lists. I believe it was for win shares. Bob Pettit show up. Just so some of the good old players can still play pretty good basketball.
Hoops, what do you think about PER?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a useful statistic when you look at it in like a broader scope. If you have a blinkered view of this person has a higher PER, therefore is better, without looking at things like usage rate or minutes per game, then yeah, I think you're going to have some difficulty there evaluating talent. To the point of why do people value the raw stats over the advanced stats? It's obvious because the advanced stats, like the raw stats, we can see on the court, and this is a sport that we love because we love to watch it. I can see the points, I can see the rebounds, I can see the assists, and I can see the impact it has on the court in that moment. But if we want to paint a broader brush of how this player's impact, we do need the advanced stats. Obviously, there is a balance between doing that and like watching basketball with a calculator. But I think that's why people have such a resistance to the advanced stats, because it paints a picture of their favorite player, like Russell Westbrook, for example, that is not favorable when you look at it at their impact on winning. And
I think I just want to add one thing real quick. I think some of them are just so complex. There's almost 2 pages of calculations. Win shares is very similar. You take something like look at effective shooting percentage. That's a 1-line calculation, and people can kind of get that, or true shooting percentage. I think some of them are just so complex. It's kind of hard not to have faith in them, to have total faith in them, except for the fact that a lot of the winners do show up in these things over and over again. So I think that kind of does give some impetus to the fact that we ought to consider at least skimming through them. The best site on these by far is called basketballreference.com. You can just Google per NBA, whatever, it'll come up. And that is the most respected site. Statistics.
Shout out to Justin, the creator of Basketball Reference. He has been on the pod, friend of the pod. Jules, what do you think of PER? And then what do you think about the whole, why do people give so much of a fuck about like the raw stats? Like for Russell, for example, when that always led to winning. So why do you give a shit?
So for me, I think that evaluation of players, I think it skews every now and again inconsistencies. For me personally, I'm a true shooting guy, so I'm glad there was some mention there. I think the calculations is fine. I use relative true shooting. I'm a big person on playoff translation, and if you're relatively translating to the playoffs more often than not, then I think that I usually rank those guys based off of that. For player efficiency rating, I don't use that as much. I'm a big WARP guy / WAR, and I'm glad that was mentioned as well. I think that's a little bit of a better indicator of how to value someone to me than most people give chance to. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, I rank it really low when I'm evaluating players. I use true shooting and relative true shooting and WARP for me personally.
Well, let's go into that because you brought that up, Doc, and then we're gonna go to you, Jules, Hoops, and then back to Doc. So me, I hate true shooting. I like effective field goal percentage way better. I think that's a way better measure. And the example I always give is like Duncan and Kobe are around the same true shooting or something along those lines, right? But you look at like Kobe's, 35-point season, right? He's getting like 10 free throws. That's 5 possessions. But he's shooting 27 possessions of shots, 28 possessions of shots, right? So if Kobe's 5 possessions can equal Duncan at the same, Duncan's better for 28 possessions over the course of however many possessions it's going to take. Over 28 possessions, Duncan's shot's going to go in more. But then Kobe's is better for the 5, and now it equals out. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think 5 possessions should somehow count. And not only that, the free throw is the worst fucking shot there is. It's only worth 1 fucking point. It's the highest percentage shot, but it's the worst because you only get 1 for every make. Every other shot, you get more points. So that's where I like effective. I've also come up with my own. I sent it into the NBA. I call it SER, scoring efficiency ratio. And what you do is you take up all the shot attempts someone can score, like Kobe's 06 season, for example. He could have scored 71.1 points if he made every single 3, 2, and free throw. He scores 35.4. That's an SER ratio of 49.8. That's bad. You want at least 50%. Someone like Adrian Dantley in his 30-point game season, his SER is 64%. He's cashing in on 64% of the shots he takes of maximum amount of points. So that's my problem with true shooting. Jules, what's your rebuttal for that? And then we'll move on.
So you bring up a good point. My thing with true shooting, where the inconsistencies definitely lie. I've had this debate a little bit earlier. Somebody had a post saying that in 2005, the Finals MVP should have been Manu Ginobili because his true shooting was, I believe, 65%, and Tim Duncan's was severely low. But the context behind that is, does Tim Duncan shoot threes or does Manu Ginobili? Manu does. So true shooting will value somebody who's shooting threes at a higher clip versus somebody who's shooting, mid-range shots and not necessarily getting to the free throw line as much. So yes, you are completely right. If you're getting to the free throw line basically just as much as me, Tim Duncan, but you're effectively getting more free throws, your true shooting is going to look a lot better than mine. So I completely understand the flaws of true shooting, and I can understand that. That's why, again, even though I am a true shooting guy, I also use, like I said, relative true shooting as well as value over replacement or WAR to evaluate some of these guys when it comes to my rankings, or at least I keep that in consideration.
Oops.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with true shooting is that it does place an emphasis on your ability to shoot free throws, which is obviously important, but like isn't always necessarily indicative of winning. Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal, perfect example of that. I did see someone tried to argue with me recently that Kobe and Tim have the same true shooting percentage in the playoffs, which I don't know if that's true. It might be true. I don't really care. So if the stat's telling you something like that, it might be a little flawed, whereas effective field goal percentage does give you basically like just
what you're doing against the D.
What you're making, how you're putting the ball in the basket on the court, right?
Yeah, what you're doing against the D. And that's going to be way more possessions than your free throw trick.
Yeah, exactly. True shooting does value like it can value foul baiting, really.
Yeah.
James Harden, for example, I think is the perfect example of that. So I do, I haven't really thought much. I mean, I do like when we're talking about players of other eras relative to true shooting the league average, like Oscar Robertson's, I think a perfect example of that because it shows how efficiently he scored versus league average. I think it's like +8. But yeah, it is something you have to keep in mind that it does have an emphasis on free throws, which are important, but when you're still scoring effectively and it impacts winning, again, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, doesn't really matter.
Doc?
Okay. Well, I think we've got a lot of things coming in the chat. So I try and address some of those or stay on this question. What would you rather do?
This question.
All right. For me, to go back about the comment about true shooting versus effective shooting percentage, I also like the effective because I think free throw percentage. You can easily look at the table and get that, figure out who's good at that and not. I think I'd rather know what they're doing from the floor alone. That's why I prefer effective field goal percentage. I do want to just real briefly though bring up, because this is one thing that's shown over and over again in the chat, is box plus minus BPM. That's an interesting stat that really I think the team has a lot of contribution to that. A player can be great, but he also has a pretty good team. But in history, James was the best, Duncan second, Dirk, Paul, KG, Curry, then Kobe shows up for the first time really in the analytics, and Curry shows up. Curry also shows up in per, I think around about 20, just so people know. Somebody asked about Curry. And I think one of the problems with shooting percentages, they really, some of them, at least the real, just basic shooting percentage really favors the big man inside. Effective field goal percentage kind of compensates for that. I don't think it fully does totally. I think they may need to kind of adjust that. But Curry is, for instance, Curry's at about 65% in effective field goal percentage. Kobe's about 47%. So there's a wide gap between what I would consider a shooter and a scorer. I think Kobe was a scorer, and Curry is a Curry and Durant. Durant's also up there, about close to 65% effective field goal percentage. It really shows, I think, the value of those guys being pure shooters.
Can I show you the flaw in true shooting? This is all you need to know. Kobe fans love true shooting percentage. If there's a stat and Kobe fans love it, you know it's fucking flawed. That right there shows you how flawed it is, because they hate stats. It's all about the eye test. It's all about this. It's all about that. So if they like it, and I'm someone, and here's my problem with box plus minus. I think there's some flaws in it, because like in the 2010 finals, just on the Lakers team, Kobe Bryant was 6th in box plus minus score behind Luke Walton. Luke Walton was 5th. Kobe Bryant was 6th. And I think we're all people that have Kobe Bryant, realistically ranked. I got him at 11th. You guys got him around like 10th, 9th, something like that?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So anyways, I think we all got him relatively realistically ranked. And, nobody's going to watch the 2010 finals and say that Kobe Bryant was the 6th best player on the Lakers. So there's an extreme flaw in it, when box plus minus. Hoops, what do you think on box plus minus?
I think box plus minus has usually been indicative of your impact in the court. Like 2016 Curry, I think, is the highest offensive box plus minus of all time, and maybe the highest box plus minus of all time. So I do think it's a very effective stat in gauging your value and how you're impacting winning on the court. That's pretty.
How do you address Kobe Bryant coming in 6th in the 2010 Finals on the Lakers? Then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that it is difficult. So if we can go through like that series, game one they win, he's good. Game 2 they lose, he's bad. Game 3 he's bad, they win. Game 3 and 4 he's really good, they lose. Game 6 he's fine, they win. Game 7 he's bad, they win. So it kind of makes sense, honestly. Yeah.
But do you think Luke Walton played better than him for those 7 games?
I do not think he did. No, I would.
So see that's the thing because it factors in what you're doing, and you could just be on the court and like the other 4 could get a hot streak going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That really doesn't have much to do with you. So Jules, what do you think?
No, that you said it right there. Like even if we take I believe the All NBA selections this year, LeBron James is the only person with a negative plus minus on there as well. So like it's weird because, and that's where Jordan fans will be like, how is he that valuable? But my thing is where it can benefit somebody, like was mentioned, is based specifically off of the lineups that they're running with, and then they're running against. So if it's a star player running against a second unit, your box plus minus is going to be run up. And even if you're let's just say a scrub player or a role player, and your team has a significant lead in the fourth quarter, your box plus minus is then going to be a lot higher, because now you're going to be looked as more valuable because now you're winning a blowout and stuff like that. So to me, it's inconsistent, but I think if used correctly in context, you can get a lot of useful information about it. But I think what you highlight with the 2010 finals as a great example with Kobe is where people can get the skewed argument of Luke Walton over Kobe Bryant.
So where should we go? So I'm someone that does value stats, and I've come to this. I've ran algorithms that just to show people, like, these are some of my stat books I do for fun. You know what I mean? Like, I make up my own stats, my own advanced stats, to try to help me in my analysis of the game. We're going to swing to Jules as we go around with this. I've come to the conclusion it's about 70-30. I think about 70% of the time you can look at the box. If you really, really know box scores and you really look at all-encompassing stats, I believe you can get up to the 90s. But just generally speaking, I think stats tell about 70% of the game and 30% is about eye tests. That's where I've come. I've ran algorithms with multiple AI settings. So that's why I will always lean towards the numbers over the eye test. I agree that there's an exception to the rules, about 3 out of 10 times, 1 out every 4 times, somewhere around there. Jules, tell me where you feel on that when incorporating it.
I don't know if to me, I wouldn't say 70-30. It might be 60-40, but 70-30 is fine. Where again, where I said this before, I think when people are starting to value the box score over a lot of stuff, like we
because I've heard you don't watch the game. I've heard you don't watch the game.
So well, that's the thing, and where I'm starting to get distraught over, because people would then argue specifically. I had this argument, I think, like a day or two ago, is that, well, I rank Larry Bird so high, but I never watched a game of him. Well, okay, because the box scores look cool, but then when I'm telling you the narratives around a lot of during his career, and we're watching, and I've watched the games who somebody who was arguing, this person who was, I'm young and the guy is older than me. How the hell do you have Larry Bird in your top 10 if you're just looking at box scores? You can't tell me why, the in between of the book, of the pages of the book. That's where I start to get distraught. We have Hoops and Tony and I have a friend who, me and him are on Stockton. But Stockton, I think, is one of these guys. I'm sorry, that is one of these box score guys, because he's all-time leader in steals and assists, like mentioned. But when you look at a lot of these box scores, yes, he's getting a lot of assists, but the translation, I think, is again one of these guys that he's very mediocre. Yes, he has a lot of good games, a good playoff series, But you look at what Utah Jazz are doing during the times before Jerry Sloan, during Jerry Sloan, then slightly after their primes. It's these weird. We have. That's where I'm saying we have to then watch to go to the ending of our conclusions of the box score. So we're seeing the value of what these guys are actually doing, what they're doing against these defensive sets, defensive pressures, how they're running their offenses, why are they getting these, and so on and so forth, to where that's where I can't just say, well, the box score is going to tell me what is, and that's done. I have to go and watch, me personally.
Oops.
Yeah, so the eye test, here's my, like, it's difficult because we watch basketball because the aesthetics of it. We like watching it. It is fun. It's pleasing our eyes to watch it. And I do.
But you don't watch the games either.
Yeah, no, I get that all the time when I do lives and all that. Well, you must not watch basketball. You're right. I just like making lists and putting them online
for entertainment, right?
And spend my time doing this. So, but the problem with the eye test is I value it. I think so, because I never thought of like the exact split that I would gauge. I think 70-30 is good, because the problem with the eye test is that you're going to go towards people who are more aesthetically pleasing. Kevin Durant is the perfect example of eye test versus on the court production and winning and all of that. Like, I had someone tell me, you can't tell me Kevin Durant's a better player than Bill Russell just looking at them. And I'm like, or Bill Russell's a better player than Kevin Durant. And so the eye test is really about your own personal preference of who you enjoy watching more, right? Did we enjoy watching Tim Duncan? Well, some of us did. A lot of people didn't, and I think that's fine. And I think that's why a lot of people are low on, are more down on him, because he wasn't as aesthetically pleasing. The Spurs I'd say later on they were with their ball movement, but they weren't as aesthetically pleasing as in the mid 2000s, the height of the dead ball era, where they really thrived. And so I think 70-30 is a good split, because again, we like watching it. I like watching certain players, even if I know that the production isn't exactly where my level of enjoyment is. And so when I'm gauging where they rank all the time, I think Kobe, and I hate bringing him up all the time, Kobe Bryant's the perfect example of it. I loved watching Kobe Bryant. It was he's my favorite player growing up. It was so fun to watch because he was so exciting, especially when he got on a tear. He was like unguardable. But
very fluid. I think his fluidity is.
Yeah, exactly. The movements and all that, so smooth. But the production, the stats, the advanced stats, and is telling me something that my eyes aren't seeing, and that's that he's not, better than LeBron James or Michael Jordan, or better than whomever, better than Magic Johnson.
Yeah, and not to intervene again, but even though I agree, I think the eye test to me is the last resort of what we have to do. The eye test won't tell me that Kobe Bryant blows a 3-1 lead to the Phoenix Suns. The eye test doesn't say that Kobe Bryant airballs four shots in a row, and that's the kind of stuff that, like, if the eye test is correct, we like to say this before, if the eye test was always right, no one would have ex-girlfriends. So
I'd like to jump in and give my my thought. I was of the opinion, before I really looked at the analytics this past few days, that Jokic really deserved the MVP. But the eye test for me was that he does this incredible passing, and he's leading a weaker team. But Shai Gilgeous, I hope I pronounced it, Alexander, got the MVP. He won the scoring title, but he also, if you looked at this, I looked at some stats this week. He's number one in the league this year in NBA plus minus. He's also number one in value over replacement this year. Yeah, and he's strong in some defensive analytics. So maybe, and his team had the highest point differential of any team in the history of the game, which a lot of people don't realize is here.
Yeah.
So I kind of almost changed my opinion that maybe I need next year take a closer look when the Thunder are on at this guy. I didn't watch him that closely. I watched the team, I watched them, but I really want to watch his game and evaluate it, because he has the potential to be something special, it looks like, looking at some of the analytics. But so does Jokic. And there's a comment about the competition. The rules have changed. There's not maybe the defensive intensity. I think there's inflation of some basic statistics. One thing about per, at least it tries to adjust for that, and so does win shares. They both try and adjust for some of the pace of the game and so forth, and some other and some defensive stats too are brought in. So I think that's why I think we should look at basic stats. We should look at some analytics. But we need to also watch the player. You need to watch the player, and I plan to really study both of them next year as much as I can. And also, I'm really intrigued what's going to happen with Luka, who lost all his weight, and toned up. He's never been he's been defensive. There's a joke out there that he can't guard a traffic cone. I don't know if it's that bad, but be interested to see how he comes in and dominates. Next year's MVP list could be really a thrilling competition. Maybe Giannis and some others. It's going to be a very tough race. I also found today something I never knew existed. There for MVPs, there actually is a ranking on basketballreference.com that ranks the shares of the MVP votes through the years for players. James is the highest on that, even though he's not has only won 4 MVPs, where others have won. Where Kareem won 6. So that there are. Again, I really like that site, basketballreference.com. You go in there and delve around. You might find some really important information, and you can find pretty much everything on it.
Here's my question. So I want to ask this because, and it's going to kind of pivot off analytics, but this is going to kind of go into awards, accolades, accomplishing and winning. Why are people so obsessed with being the best player in the world? As someone, like I said, Scott Russell, people always argue that, Wilt was better and all that. And we'll just use SGA and Jokic because this is a much better example. Would you rather have this year Jokic's season, or would you rather have SGA's season? So SGA is a top 5 player. You get an MVP, you get a finals MVP, you get a scoring title, or you can be the unofficial best player in the world title. Let's go with hoops first. What would you rather have this season? Would you rather have SGA's season or Jokic's season?
I'd rather have SGA's season, obviously.
Cool. Well, no. Then we're going to go deeper in this. Jules, real quick, SGA or Jokic?
SGA.
Cool. Doc, SGA's season or Jokic's this year?
SGA, especially after doing
cool. So now let's break this down. So Hoops, if we all agree that being the best player in the world really don't mean a fuck, why do you think people are so obsessed with that shit?
Well, I think the basketball community is obsessed with rankings more than any other sport. I think sports are usually discussions around sports beyond basketball are about ranking players. What do we talk about all the time on TikTok or online anywhere is where do people rank all time, top 10, top 5, all that stuff. Yeah. And so we talk about that stuff all the time. And so we want to contextualize who's the best player in the world. And why are they the best player in the world? And how can we rank these players? I think that's why. I think it's our obsession with ranking things and finding an order to an arbitrary order to the players, I would say.
Doc, real quick, why do you think people give so much of a fuck when we all agree we'd rather be the lesser player and do the more winning with the more accomplishments?
It was well said just a second ago that the bottom line is that winning should matter to everybody. But people do look at these incredible stats that the guy's putting up that haven't been done ever. I do believe there's a lot of credibility to the fact. I think triple doubles in particular are overrated as a winning stat. Now Tim Duncan has the all-time lead in double doubles. That seems to translate to winning. But you got Westbrook, you got Oscar Robertson, LeBron James, and except for Joseph, there's only a couple titles been won by people during the seasons. They've had those multiple either season triple doubles or not. I think that to me is an overvalued stat. I'd rather have a player's just getting a double double in the right things is more valuable to winning than a triple double. But I do have a prediction. We're going to have the first quadruple in the next few years. It'll happen by Wemby. He's going to do it. He's had 2 5x5s already, which means 5 steals, 5 blocks, whatever. And if the guy's healthy, he's going to do it one of these days. Just match David Robinson. Hakeem had 2. And I think it was Thurman.
I count Tim Duncan in Game 6 of the Finals. That's a real quadruple double.
Yeah, well,
they misrecorded 2 blocks.
Well, before we get too far out, Jules, what do you think? Why do people give a fuck so much about this ranking when everybody would say, I'd rather have the great stats like SGA and lead to wins than Jokic's season?
Because like I said, it's more of the box score kind of stuff. It's the arbitrary wanting to rank you as the best player in the world. So when we go and talk about this guy, he has the media hype and the media attention behind him to value him as, you know, the best player in the world. But arbitrarily, like we don't necessarily know that, because I've been thinking about this like quite recently, because somebody was trying to make an argument with me about like Olympic basketball, is that, you know, France, Argentina, Spain, they all have really good players and really good teams when it comes to the Olympics and their personal leagues, and we don't see them until, you know, if they ever decide to come over and play for the NBA. So it's this kind of ignorant, it's somewhat ignorant kind of narrow-minded view, is that, yes, the USA has dominated, and I'm not saying that we're subpar, but because we've dominated for so long that we have the best talent in the world. Well, like Doc mentioned, Victor Wembanyama just came from France, and he could possibly average, you know, whatever with the box score. Pleasing, but now since really 2018, 2019, maybe you could dock it a little bit before, there's been global players, people who are non-Americans, you can argue, that are top 5 in the NBA that aren't from here. So is America really producing the amount of players that we think it is? It looks like arbitrarily, not really. So that's my shtick.
So this is my last question for the panel, and then I'm going to throw it to Hoops, Jules, and we're going to end it with the Doc, and then we got to go. And this is the last question on it. Why is it people are stupid and they don't realize they're stupid? Okay, because people like to argue winning until that doesn't matter, and then it's about the stats, and then people like to argue the stats, but then it matters about winning. So we'll just use this, and I see this mostly with Kobe fans. Kobe fans, you'll argue like LeBron over Kobe, because, you know, LeBron's got the better stats ever, right? And Kobe don't give a shit. You know, now it's about winning, right? Then you pivot and you go, well, if it's all about winning, Russell clearly clears Kobe. No, Wilt's better. Look at the stats. You know what I mean? Well, why is it when LeBron is better with the stats, with less rings, and obviously he led his team to more titles, so there's a legitimate argument in winning too. It doesn't matter about the stats. Now it's all about winning. But now when Russell, who doesn't lead and clearly leads to far more winning Wilt, now it's all about the stats. Hoops, why are people stupid and don't realize they're stupid? You're on mute.
Muted. You're on mute.
I think you just have to take a more holistic approach to it. I don't know why, you know, people just, it's like they go back and forth. They like oscillate between different narratives, different criteria, depending on who they're arguing with and who they're arguing on behalf of. And I think you just need to take a more holistic approach. The stats, the on-court production, the eye test, and the end product which is how much they win and how did they win.
Jules?
To shift it, like all time, I think winning is definitely indicative. But with this, the Jokic and the SGA kind of argument, is that people don't necessarily understand. Like they gloss over the fact that the Thunder were the fourth most injured team in the NBA this year. The other 5 all missed the playoffs, while the Thunder, like mentioned before, had set the all-time net rating in NBA history over the 72 Lakers. And SGA is part of that primarily, and the stats will back that up. So if I have the scoring title, if I have the accolades specifically to back me up on top of the NBA championship, I should be valued as much as anything else. While Jokic definitely has the stats, the analytics, the advanced metrics behind him, but people that will then, you know, change their thing to where like, oh, well, his team got hurt and the head coach got fired, which is understandable. I understand that argument. But the majority of the year, the Thunder players weren't fucking playing, and SGA is putting on numbers at the guard position, only rivaled to Michael Jordan. So to me, it's like who said, to get back to the point, people will shift the narrative to fit their narrative, and they don't stay consistent. And that's where I think a lot of people in the community, sports community in general, find a really hard line to guide themselves down to try to be as consistent as possible.
Doc, why do you think people are stupid and don't realize they're stupid?
I think a lot of it, honestly, is the media. They tend to inflate the value of one player over another, and people catch on to things and run with them. I'll just tell you, I have my own formulas very quickly. I had titles plus MVPs plus finals MVPs. Jordan has 17. James has 12. And Jabbar has 14, and Russell has 16. And that's a starting point for me to take a look at players all the time and decide where I want to go and what I want to go from. From then I'll look at the advanced stats. But somebody asked real quickly why Joseph is statistically the greatest player. How true is that? Nobody's saying he's the greatest player ever. He's moving in the contention to get in the top 10 ranking, I think. And he's doing a lot of incredible things. But a career is not won in the first few years of your career. And remember that players do tend, as they age, to drop off in basic statistics. So some of that may disappear a little bit, and some of the rankings may change. So I try and look at the winning stats and analytics as a combination to make my own opinion how great a player is. I will just tell you, his career was short, but I watched films of him. Bill Walton, he had been as a player, he had stayed healthy, would have dominated not only basic stats and analytics. We'd have a different conversation about the top 10 players of all time. And he won a title. To give him credit, he won titles. So that's the kind of thing. You have to kind of take in the injury history and other things going on and make an educated opinion. And I want to thank Jay and the other people on the panel. They challenged me. I prepared for just kind of a lecture on analytics, but instead I've been asked good questions all night long. And I'm going to ask one back. You're on the spot right now. Who wins the title next year? I say the Thunder again.
It's an easy pick.
Right now, it looks like the Thunder.
I'm going to go against the grain. I think the Nuggets get one.
Hey, fuck it. I'm going Suns. We're going Suns, goddammit.
All right, my dark horse, Mavericks. Motivated AD and three other stars. That could be a tough team. I'm just gonna say that's a dark horse. We have a little sports. We have a little sports betting in a restaurant near my house. Every year I'm gonna go in and put a couple on a few teams. I haven't decided them yet.
If I'm going dark horse, I think the Knicks are getting better every year.
Yeah, it's a good dark horse.
I would say the Magic.
Too.
There's a lot of good teams out there. That's about a lot of good teams.
Yeah,
how about the Rockets with Durant? You
never know. The problem with Durant is he's injured. The Suns, they were 3-18 this last year without Durant. So if you can handle him missing a quarter of the season, you guys should do good. But on that note, we're out. We want to thank the Doc for stopping by again. He's always welcome back. Till then, make sure you bless the ones who broke you, because they're the ones who built you.
Oh, Canada. Put on a suit, drink water. Don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.